The year is 1843, and in the bedroom of a wealthy Heraklion family, the story of the day is life. They've just had a healthy baby boy. And as if by some premonition, they name that child after the mythical king Minos, as if destined by birth to be a true son of Crete. Yet the screams of his mother are nothing compared to the city around her. There, it is the endless funeral of a stillborn nation. The silence shattered by bullets, and then the weeping from the graves of those who dared to dream. That boy is born on an island that is not free, to a people who are not free. And his home is but a tiny piece of a giant empire, an empire that stretches from Somalia to Ukraine. And yet, his people revolt. They rise for their freedom again and again, only to be turned into memories, stories to tell children like him. That blood of each successive generation, just another coat of paint on that blurred canvas of hope. And this is the soil where Minos grows, an earth quaking with revolution. And he will be its soldier. It's just his weapon will be archaeology. And that's more than just vanity, because this is the 1800s, and the giant unblinking ogre on every emperor's doorstep is ethnic nationalism, that world-shattering wind blowing down from the Alps, screaming that the foundation of the state is not the divine right of kings. Yet while that siren sings many things to many people, here in Crete the chorus sounds hope, and as if from his very birth, it is Minos who aims to write those lyrics. Even as a teen, he's already searching the caves of the interior, finding evidence of a civilization not yet known to science. He invites a French archaeologist to discuss professional excavations, but revolution yet again rips through the towns of Crete, and yet again those Ottomans come to raze them. Death bubbles up like coffee in some vat of Turkish sand. By 1869, everything is in ruins again, and it's not the type that interests Minos, but for all that death and destruction, people did win something, a tiny hint of autonomy, and it's an autonomy on which Minos will capitalize. He'll get permission from that new authority and start excavating what would soon prove to be perhaps the greatest archaeological find in all European history. He digs into his land and pulls out a miracle. He not only finds evidence of a civilization that predates the Ottomans, it predates all other European civilizations. The people of Crete aren't just unique, they are Europe's foundation, and he can prove it. They deserve to be free. It is everything that he could ever dream of, vindication beyond his wildest expectations, and I can only imagine how incredible that feeling must have been. Or for that matter, how much it must have hurt to then watch it all get wiped away. In 1895, there's one final revolution, only this time, the story between those walls isn't life, but fire. As if by some monkey's paw, Minos gets his wish. Crete becomes free. It's just in turn, he is asked to trade everything. His son is murdered. His brother beheaded, his home containing his life's work, virtually every artifact that prove those Minoans exist, is burnt to the ground. From everything he's collected, only a few pithoi survive, sent off to museums around the world in the hopes of sparking some interest in the Cretans' cause, of lighting a flame actually worth burning. And in Britain, that small bit of clay finds its vessel. From the Ashmolean Museum comes forth Arthur Evans, yet another character in this story who kind of seems as if he were written from birth for his role. The son of a wealthy professor, university life doesn't appeal to Evans. He wants to see the world, and so alongside a few other friends with aspirations of adventure, he takes what I suppose these days we'd call a gap year and heads to the collapsing Ottoman Empire in the hopes of telling stories of revolution in Herzegovina. And while there, he excavates a lost Roman city, and from that moment on considers himself an archaeologist like his father. Not necessarily a professional one, but hey, he did excavate a city. And this is the 1800s, the golden era of citizen science. The basis of half of all understanding comes from the tinkerings of some amateur. So in 1884, he's offered a position with the Ashmolean Museum. Not coincidentally, the very museum his dad happens to be a part of, but that said, they are better off for it because he does the job very well. And as time goes on, he works his way up that ladder. Which means that 14 years later, when that Tithoi arrives on England's shores, it's almost like he's waiting for it. Not just because his background is perfect for this, but Evans has also just lost his wife to disease, and his mind is desperate for something to latch onto. So despite it being a full-blown civil war, he throws caution to the wind and puts himself on a ship to Crete, becoming among the first foreign observers to report on the ethnic cleansing now running rampant across the island. There, he meets with a defeated Minos and takes that monkey's paw for himself. Only unlike that Cretan before him, his wish isn't that the island become famous, his plans are a lot more personal. In 1898, in secret, he buys the land above Knossos, and then just hours after the newly independent British-backed government opens for business, he requests the right to excavate. Before most people around the world even know this country now exists, Evans is already putting shovels into its soil. And just as soon as they hit the dirt, the world changes around them. It is gripped with news from Crete, just as it was with Egypt a generation before. From Beijing to Buenos Aires, the entire world is now listening to the stories that Evans tells. Over the next 3 years, he delivers artifact after artifact, headline after headline, and each one is more sensational than the last. His Minoans, as he now calls them, were nothing short of utopian. Pacifist merchants of an island thalassocracy, who despite their small size used love of God and king to, not to mention their navy, to become the most powerful state of their time. They were basically Britain. But I'm not entirely sure that's true. Nor, for that matter, are his peers. They point out a number of things in his findings that simply don't make sense, and what's worse, they'd like to point out he keeps faking things. Well, perhaps not so much him, but the men he hires. One of Evans' most memorable employees, for example, is a father and son duo out of Switzerland, artists who, shall we say, recreate the unrecreatable. They take broken bits of murals, pottery, statues, icons, and then find a way to make them whole again, which in practice means essentially inventing entire pieces of art and then sort of passing them off as historical fact. And not that anybody ever proves it, but they're also pretty sure that they're selling counterfeit artifacts that they're producing on the side, which naturally irks some people, especially when Evans starts filling the excavation in with concrete to fit his vision, turning Knossos into a palace of his own imagination, moving pieces from every corner of the landscape and then gluing them together like some Frankenstein's castle. Should this staircase even be here, for example? We have no idea, but we know that Evans thought so. And you can sort of apply that same principle to really anywhere at this site. Together, he and his artists create such a jumble from their findings that it becomes difficult for other researchers from his era to tell what's real and what's fantasy. And the more that Evans shouts about this new civilization to the world, the more that the echoes of academia come back calling him destructive. And Minos would certainly agree, because from the moment that Evans arrived in his life, he is completely forgotten, boxed out from not just the operation of the dig, but the memory of it happening at all. It would take over 100 years before Minos starts to become recognized for his contribution to this dig. Even now, he is nothing compared to the man who replaced him. Because Evans had wished for fame on that monkey's paw. He just had to fake a couple paintings to get it. In turn, he would become a household name, but at the same time, he'd give Minos everything that he dreamed of as well. People would talk about Crete across the entire world, the same way that they'd talked about those pyramids. They would tell the story that Minos had spent his entire life trying to get them to tell. It's just that they had to talk about Evans to do it, whether he was right or not. And I suppose that's why, to this day, Evans is still considered somewhat of a hero in Crete, or At the very least, a complicated figure. He's certainly no Lord Elgin stealing marbles. And to his credit, today Knossos is now the second most visited site in Greece after the Acropolis. The economy of Crete feeds on his story, even still. And I understand why. It's a great story. The Minoans were a fascinating, deep, and misunderstood culture. And while it might have taken a bit of fantasy to get things going, I suspect that Evans would be happy to hear himself proven wrong. Or not. I suppose it doesn't really matter either way, because the thing about a story is, once you start telling it, it kind of stops being yours. This is Rare Earth.